Hey guys, my name is SickBOT1, and... well, this took longer than expected. Sorry.
I'm not crazy, I'm just a little unwell, I know.
It was fun talking about some rightfully forgotten songs with Finn when I initially went through this year, but now it's time to flip the script on my own. Because, well, I can handle good music by myself, even if it's stuff I've never heard of before, and 2003 had a good mix of that and some deeply nostalgic songs for me personally. Then again, I felt nostalgic listening to Your Body is a Wonderland again, so that's not always a good thing. But I like it when old years give me a feeling like this. Makes me feel like they did something right. So, on we march back into a year that was, at the very least, competent. Top 10 best hit songs of 2003.
What's wrong with the world, mama? People living like they ain't got no mama.
Number 10. So the first song on this list is a conscious rap song. This song wasn't made for me. The lyrics are directed at children, primarily black children in underdeveloped neighborhoods. I don't fit into any aspect of this demographic, so I don't think I can add much to this conversation, or even that it's a good idea to try. So instead of trying to lecture or insert myself into this, I'm simply going to try to show appreciation for how well I think this song is executed. Got my eggshells ready. Each verse deals with a different horror of the world that you don't often hear being spoken to children. First, Nas discourages children from turning to hard drugs and uses a specific example of a singer he knew who nearly died of an overdose.
Sniffing up drugs, all in the nose. Could have died so young, now looks ugly and old.
In the second verse, he warns girls of skeevy men who will take advantage of them, while discouraging boys from turning into that kind of person. And lastly, Nas gives a history lesson about slavery.
Africa was almost robbed naked. Slavery was money, so they began making slave ships.
Which is a bit odd, but he spins it to encourage black children to become more than what others say they can become. Well, the first two topics could be applied to a wider audience. That third topic, on the other hand, is pretty squarely aimed at just one demographic. The cynical part of my brain tells me this is a little preachy, but it manages to stay grounded in gritty realism, describing distressing situations to an audience most people would try to censor or sugarcoat to. And really, technically the only censorship that happens is Nas not dropping a single curse word, which I suppose is the least he could do for a younger audience. Other than that, there's no pandering. There's some standard you can be whatever you want to be mantras, especially on the chorus, but there's the dark stories to balance it out, framed appropriately so he's not trying to scare these kids, but more to provide a cautionary tale. Balanced as it should be. I feel like there's an Infinity War reference I could make here.
I know I can be what I wanna be.
On a production level, this is also really solid. The beat interpolates Beethoven's For Elise, and it sounds nice even when simplified. Nas's flow is also on point. There's not a lot I can object to here. It's smartly written and composed, and it got a children's chorus right. That only happens once in a blue moon or something. I can buy Nas. Proof that children's songs don't have to be terrible.
Save the music, y'all. Save the music.
But if you only have love for your own race, then you only leave space to discriminate.
Number 9. Well, now I think it's time that I lean back into my comfort zone. That comfort zone being, okay, never mind. I didn't know Dierks Bentley's career started back in 2003. I just assumed most of the country acts we have nowadays haven't been around for more than a decade. But sometimes looking at the past can surprise you. Really goes to show how much of an outsider I still feel like when it comes to country. But hey, even though the only other time I talked about this guy was in my Worst of 2016 video, I've got nothing against Dierks Bentley. I like his voice, and he tends to be colorful in his writing, which I can't say about a lot of country dudes. A lot of his contemporaries seem to be content to spout southern cliches and brag about their trucks or whatever. Obviously, that doesn't apply to all country music. I'd be closed-minded if I said it did. Dierks, on the other hand, gives me lyrical details to remember, such as feeling like a plastic broom on a wedding cake and drunk on a plane. And that very much carries over to his debut single, where he talks about a relationship with a girl that leaves him feeling in over his head. In the first verse, her dad even threatens to shoot the poor guy.
Her daddy came out waving that 12 gauge. We tore out the drive, he peppered my tailgate.
It's a very ridiculous song, but it runs with it and is just oozing with charm. It feels dangerous and reckless with the post-chorus guitar riff really kicking it into high gear. It's a huge contrast to the country songs I tend to put on my best lists. I've given praise to ballads primarily, in case you didn't know, Marry Me and I Hope You Dance in particular, but I also have a soft spot for outlaw country, or at least I think I do. Think It Ain't My Fault by Brothers Osborne. That's a pretty high bar to reach for the genre, and What Was I Thinking doesn't quite get there, but it still succeeds. Bentley comes off less like a tough guy in this story and more like Michael Cera, but he's not overplaying his hand here. He's portraying the shenanigans he gets into as frightening for him, but his lust for this girl keeps him from running away screaming. Did I just compliment a country singer for being horny? Feels weirdly out of character for me. It doesn't bother me so much here, because it's used more as a framing device than being the main focus. And with the kick-ass mix of fiddles and guitars, this shot of pure adrenaline really stuck out to me amidst a country scene that otherwise didn't really stick with me that well. I can easily see why this guy's career is still strong 16 years later, as he ain't half bad. Number 8. I don't hate this song. Not even a little. Okay, maybe a little. I do understand why this isn't a very respected song in retrospect, though. Its main aesthetic is to be annoying while showing as much catty jealousy as possible. But I didn't put it in my Worst of 2007 video for a couple different reasons. One, I kinda don't mind that she's being awful because that's the point of the song anyway. And two, I don't really have a larger scope of what Avril Lavigne's music was like before this. I've seen people like Mr. 96 and Finn express what a great artist Lavigne was when she first hit the mainstream, and I had no reason to doubt them. And I still don't, because as it turns out, they were correct. It's a damn cold night. You're trying to figure out. I feel like I'm listening to an entirely different artist when I listen to this. I'm used to songs like Girlfriend or What the Hell, songs where she's trying to be annoying and rebellious. And when she tries to be mature, I'm more used to songs like Keep Holding On and Head Above Water, which feel hollow and corporate. I'm With You sounds much more personal by comparison. It feels lonely and secluded in a similar fashion as Boulevard of Broken Dreams, with a similarly explosive chorus. Funny how pop punk can have a reputation for being whiny when it can just as easily be potent like this. The lyrics convey some very simple emotions on the surface: loneliness, eagerness, frustration, and it's left to a bit of interpretation, which makes it easy to slot yourself into this situation. But while some of the lyrics are vague, there's still enough detail written in to make this feel personal. I'm standing on the bridge, I'm waiting in the dark. The opening lines about waiting on a bridge in the dark in particular get to me, because Minnesota City nights, especially close to winter, can be lonely. And cold. I can't say I've ever waited for somebody on a bridge at night, though, but, it's close enough at least. But a song like this is only as strong as the way it sounds, which, in this case, is very strong. The electric guitars and violins blend well together, and they kinda remind me of early Goo Goo Dolls. Makes me long for the days where this brand of rock had real success on the Hot 100. I mean, to be fair, looking back at just about any year of the 2000s does that to me. But you know me, I'm a sad girl, so songs like this are what I live for. And Avril herself, yeah, she knocks it out of the park. The emotion is spot on, the belting is quite good, especially on the bridge. She really sells the anguish here. The gap between this and Complicated is really apparent now that I think about it. Complicated isn't bad, it really isn't. It's just really forceful, and the vocals and production are rough around the edges. I'm With You strikes the perfect balance between power and raw emotion, and it sticks the landing a lot better for it. Even Avril herself considers it one of her best songs, and has said that it would be the song she would dedicate to her fans. And really, I don't think I can imagine a more perfect choice coming from her. Fantastic song, can't wait to talk about her again for 2004 with my happy ending. Number 7. If I were to feel guilty about any of these picks, it would probably be this one. Good thing I don't feel guilty about it. Back off, I'll take you on. Headstrong to take on anyone. Nu metal and post-grunge get a bad rap. The songs are stupid, repetitive, stupid, angsty, stupid. But like most things, that doesn't mean there isn't a way to do it right. You've got your Linkin Parks, your, well, I like Alien Ant Farm's cover of Smooth Criminal, and I'm sure I just made someone angry by saying that.
You'd think I'd know better than to stick up for unpopular songs at this point.
Back on topic, Trapt is not a band I know anything about aside from this song. They could be terrible otherwise, and I'd never know. But Headstrong really works for me on a visceral level. There's some actual meat here with some well fleshed out melodies. Even the jerky main riff is catchy as hell. Then there's the reverb-soaked licks that make up the verses, and oh boy, it's gorgeous.
The words gorgeous and nu metal don't really go together that often, do they? And that's kind of why this works.
I also like this guy's voice. It's very clean and devoid of the typical edgelord crap that can plague nu metal. Because of that, these fighting spirit lyrics don't come off as corny, and even though he doesn't sound like the buffest guy in the world, he still sounds like he means business. There's a subtle anger in his voice, but there's an effort to sound good and melodic so you can actually take it seriously. Plus he does a pretty mean growl to transition between the pre-chorus and the chorus. Well, that's worth at least one headbang, don't lie.
But my favorite part has always been this bridge.
The first 2 times the pre-chorus plays, it sounds like this. But in the bridge before the last chorus, it becomes this. I just love how he takes a longer break than usual and has to squeeze in the lyrics like that. It's kinda funny. But that aside, this is exceptional for its genre and the perfect fight song, workout song, whatever. It's intense, it's well produced, it kicks ass, no shame. Maybe post-grunge wasn't a mistake after all. Yeah, right.
By the way, this outro, absolutely breathtaking. The way these vocals just echo and fade out is just amazing. Alright, cue the transition.
It just ain't the same, always new change. New days are strange, is the world insane?
Number 6.
Look up here, I'm in heaven.
Celebrity deaths are always just heartbreaking to me, even if I never personally heard of them. They're always the kind of figures you imagine could never die. For example, this past fall, Stan Lee died. Sure, he was nearly 100 years old, but he was the face of an entire industry to many, and it was sad to see him go.
And yeah, I've talked posthumously about artists before, but rarely have I talked about a song by an artist who took their own life where the song itself is about death. This is going to be an uncomfortable one.
Audioslave was a supergroup formed by the musicians of Rage Against the Machine and vocalist Chris Cornell, best known as the singer of Soundgarden, and this is the only year-end hit that any of these people ever had. In the late 2000s, I did find myself listening to a few Audioslave songs, since at that time, I was still in my anti-rap phase and I couldn't stand Radham, but I recognized that Tom Morello was a very talented guitar player.
Of course, now I recognize that Radham is a great band and that Teen Me was a moron. And I thought I was an intellectual, too.
Now, as far as Audioslave songs go, this isn't quite my favorite. I much prefer Coach Ice, Gasoline, and Show Me How to Live, as they have more energy and are a better showcase of Chris Cornell's amazing vocal chops. But Like Us Known is still special to me, not because I associate it with a specific event in my life, but because I did still listen to it often in high school. Plus, looking back now, the reality of Cornell's suicide in 2017 make the lyrics of an old man waiting for death all the more haunting.
I remember that just a couple days after Chris Cornell's death, my family and I went to this pizza restaurant for dinner to celebrate my college graduation, and the entire time we were there, speakers played nothing but Chris Cornell songs.
And it's not just Cornell's death or the lyrics that make this haunting. Really, it was haunting from the start. The guitar riffs are stuttery, making this especially textured for a ballad. Even the guitar solo sounds like a ghostly wail with the various wah-wah effects and scratching you would expect from a Tom Morello guitar solo, and it works absolutely beautifully.
Even when he's taking it down a notch, this guy is insanely talented. How do you make a guitar sound like this, and why does it work so well?
But of course, Cornell is the star of the show here, giving one hell of an emotional performance. Not the best performance he's ever given, we're talking about the voice behind Spoon Man here, but still one that feels tortured and is absolutely dripping with melancholy. Every note is a gut punch, especially the way he sings patiently in the final chorus. The song is just beautiful. A bit difficult to listen to now that the voice behind it is no longer with us, but emotional all the same.
Chris Cornell, a one-of-a-kind presence, and as far as I'm concerned, a legend in rock. I'll never forget you.
So ask yourself, is the loving really gone? So I could ask myself, really what is going wrong?
Number 5.
Oh hey, look, another female-fronted rock song!
I could count the number of American Idol winners I remember on one hand. It's pretty much just Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood. But to be fair, do you really need anyone else? Every other time I come across an American Idol winner or runner-up or notable contestant yada yada yada, I just don't care. And why should I when they're basically just singing the same song over and over again?
That's what I admire about Kelly Clarkson. I mean, at least in this point of her career.
Yes, she's made some bland, generic songs, but probably an equal amount of classics that have aged very well because they show ambition that some of Kelly's peers lacked. Since You've Been Gone and Behind These Hazel Eyes hold up well today because they're powerful and emotive, and it's no different on her early hit Miss Independent, not to be confused with the Neo song of the same name, or...
Yep, it means that Kelly Clarkson's running circles around you sleazeballs.
I guess the production here hasn't aged the best, particularly the bass, which is notably pretty blubbery. On the other hand, it does give this song a lot more texture, especially on the chorus, and the electric guitars are also pushed to the back of the mix on the verses, which is a shame because I love the chromatic melody and the way it caps off with those power chords. It really makes this song feel laid back, even though each riff still packs a lot of punch. I can easily look past these faults because they're not too distracting. Plus, most of these issues are fleshed out on the bridge, which goes for a more organic, climactic sound, so it's not all bad.
It was the early to mid-2000s. What else was rock supposed to sound like if it wasn't Nickelback?
Also, for her first real single outside of American Idol, this is surprisingly challenging. The lyrics describe a woman who's self-proclaimed independent and who doesn't need no man, only to find herself lowering her emotions and falling in love despite wanting to keep up that image. It's a perfect scenario for pop music, dealing with the inner conflict of choosing between love and reputation. It shows weakness and vulnerability, which makes for interesting story writing. We can act like we're in control of a situation, even when we're freaking out inside, and that's okay.
Makes you wonder how a good chunk of this song came from Christina Aguilera.
Miss Independent may not have been Clarkson's first hit, but it might as well have been. It's anthemic, charming, smartly written, and kick-ass to this day. Since You've Been Gone may be better remembered, but this was just a better song all around, no contest.
What's the love, y'all? Come on. I don't know. What's the truth, y'all? Come on. I don't know. What's the love, y'all?
Number 4.
So crazy right now.
I mean... duh.
Out of all the songs Beyoncé and Jay-Z have made together, I think this has stayed the most well-known and most beloved. Both of those accolades are very well earned, even though Deja Vu, Ape and even 03 Bonnie and Clyde do put up some solid competition.
With how often this couple works together well when making music, it's a bit surprising that it took until just last year for them to make a full album together. And it's even more surprising that it sucked.
But I've already talked about that era of their relationship in a prior video. Here, I get to take a look at when their relationship was just starting out, where the spark of the relationship is arguably at its strongest. This feels like a momentous occasion with the blaring horns and clattering percussion, and I love it. The production feels just on the edge of feeling overstuffed, and Beyoncé's vocals on the chorus are just on the edge of clashing with it. But it doesn't, and that oddly makes it feel more exciting, like it's teetering on being a train wreck, but that tight as hell rhythm keeps it all together.
You could say that this song is changed to the rhythm. And I'd probably wince if you told me that.
Compared to Deja Vu, Beyoncé doesn't show off that much in her vocals. She focuses on being sultry instead of belting. And like you'd expect, Bey sings about how crazy she is for Jay, while Jay's verse is mostly made of boasts for how great of a power couple they are. Calling it a bit early, but at least that gamble paid off. Speaking of early, you probably should have given that diss 11 years, buddy. I do have some nitpicks with Jay's verse. At one point, he tries to rhyme cloth with chinchilla, and his flow is sloppy at points, but it's a decent verse that's at least well thought out and feels genuine, despite and maybe even because of the boasting throughout. Though I kinda wonder if there was a pop station back in the day that was white enough to cut his verse. I hope not, because cutting the duet aspect of a song like this would have been an unbelievably bad look.
Still wouldn't put it past some radio stations, though.
Love songs with real-life inspiration can be a double-edged sword, so it's comforting to know that this wasn't a preemptive collaboration. G-Eazy and Halsey may or may not feel embarrassed that him and I is in their discographies, but Beyoncé and Jay-Z don't have to be embarrassed by this. But even if it didn't pan out, at least it left us with an incredible classic that's among the best of each of their bodies of work.
The weight of the world on my shoulder. As I'm getting older, your people get colder.
Number 3.
Oh, hey! Another female-fronted rock.
Could you look me in the eye and tell me that you're happy now?
With some songs I love, I'm able to give a meaty explanation of why I love it so much. With this song, I don't know if it's all that necessary. It's kind of a simple song at its core, but it does what it does so well that it feels absolutely primal.
I mean, just listen to the way these guitars sound. It doesn't sound like anything that I would have a problem with.
Would you tell it to my face? Or have I been erased?
This is pure angst and I love it. The verses already start out really tense and grand that when the guitars really start to kick in on the chorus, it's the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Not just because of the guitars, but because of Michelle Branch's voice. I don't think I've heard anything else from her aside from that Santana song she collaborated on this year, but I'm looking forward to hearing more from her when I eventually look at 2001 and 2002 because her voice is incredible. It's pained and commanding, elevating what could have been a whiny post-breakup song into genuine heartbreak.
The phrase, "could you look me in the eye and tell me that you're happy now," hits a hell of a lot harder than, well, I'm sure you can fill in the gap.
Are you happy now?
Yes, this is kind of a simple sentiment that you'd probably be able to find thousands of other examples of in music. Even last year, we had a Zedd song with a nearly identical title. But this has gotta be up there with some of the best ways this sentiment has been expressed. There's real fear here, and given the angle it takes, it's impressive that this turned out to be so cathartic instead of insufferable. After all, the breakup in this song doesn't seem to be reasoned, meaning there has to have been plenty of time to get over it. Plus, it's easy for me to roll my eyes when the singer behind a breakup song is confused that their ex feels better while they're still hurting.
After all, that's a selfish mindset. Why would you want someone to be miserable?
Well, most of the reason this works is because of the presentation. The lyrics also give off the impression that this guy didn't treat her the best and also lied constantly about her. There's not a lot of detail given, but it does at least give the impression there's a reason for the spite rather than jealousy or selfishness. She's not over how badly their separation went, and while again I have no personal experience, it does at least feel justified here. But even if it wasn't, yeah, this sounds so incredible that I wouldn't care. It's everything I want music to be. Big and in-your-face desperate.
Are you happy now? Father, 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 help us. Send guidance from above.
Number 2. Most of the time, my eligibility for a list includes any song that debuted on the Billboard year-end list. Outside collabs, I don't consider year-end repeats eligible even if they were more successful in the second year, because I associate songs more with when they were first big, rather than when they were the biggest. In my eyes, Smooth by Santana is a 1999 song, not a 2000 song. Havana by Camila Cabello is a 2017 song, not a 2018 song. Lose Yourself by Eminem is a 2002 song, not a 2003 song.
And as eager as I am to give Lose Yourself the praise it deserves, it's gonna have to wait. Fortunately for this year, there was one other really good Eminem song that I can give praise to in the meantime. And on top of that, I think it's even better than Lose Yourself. Yeah, I said it.
These ideas are nightmares to white parents whose worst fear is a child with dyed hair and who likes earrings.
Unlike with Are You Happy Now, there's a lot that swims through my mind regarding this song. It's a bit of a loaded gun for the ways M tackles his critics. Not with insults or punchlines, but by laying everything he can out on the floor and by deconstructing not just himself, but rock and rap in general and how that music has affected the youth. It's that confrontation with the effect he's had on the world that makes for some of his best material.
I don't know if this is blasphemous to say or not, but I would even say this is close to being in the same ballpark as Stan for that particular genre of Eminem.
And really, what other song am I supposed to compare it to? Not only does it have that deep level of self-awareness that would betray him the next year, but this is built on a very obvious sample. With Stan, you had Dito's Thank You, and with Sing for the Moment, you have Aerosmith's Dream On, with Aerosmith guitarist Joe Perry even performing the guitar solo in the outro. Dream On is up there with some of my favorite songs of all time, so most artists who just want to sample it wholesale would probably end up pissing me off. With M, though, it's clear he loves himself some rap rock, and the sample here makes a lot of sense. Dream On is a song about self-reflection, or at least I think it is. M taking it for his own song about self-reflection and, well, Singing for the Moment only expands on that, and on top of that, I can easily imagine Dream On being a song a child with a troubled home life might confide in.
46 years later, and Steven Tyler's falsetto still sends shivers down my spine.
But not as much as what Marshall actually delivers on these verses. The first verse sets the scene of a young boy whose dad walked out on him and whose stepdad hits him. His only escape is music, including Eminem and other rappers. M goes on to acknowledge that his words and songs have helped others, which astonishes him and even kinda scares him. But critics and even law enforcement don't see his music that way, and think he needs to be locked up not only because of, well, pretty much anything he raps about, but for the effect he supposedly has on terrible people.
Yeah, the whole thing where the media blames entertainment for violence in the world is nothing new. I mean, it's just like police brutality, like the Dead Kennedys were singing about it in 1980.
They say music can alter moves and talk to you. Well, can it load it for you and do?
Well, M does throw this back into everyone's face because, honestly, if you blame rap for an act of terrorism, you're a dumbass. In the third verse, he does try to own up to the influence he has on his audience. He knows he's got idols who treat him like a role model, and he finds that horrific, which is the normal human reaction for someone taking an Eminem song at face value in most cases. However, he states that his goal isn't to turn children to crime, but to comfort them the same way rap helped him through his childhood. That's a way a good chunk of his audience has taken his music, sure, but it's not the same story for everyone, both fans and critics.
And if you didn't think this was close to touching Stan before, hope I at least made my case.
Sing for the Moment is a song where Eminem does his best to cover his bases when it comes to his public image and influence, and it does a fantastic job at that. For a second time in a row, I could have had a best list with Marshall at the top, but it just missed the spot by being so much of a gut punch that it's not the most replayable track in his discography. Still, it stands out to me as one of his most ambitious tracks of all time, and shows just why back in the day, he was an icon in music. Posthumous releases are a bit of a hot-button issue in music nowadays, and while in most cases I would say don't release material unless the artist explicitly said it was okay, that doesn't mean a great song can't come out of it.
That 20 binge, train.
Again, Train really wasn't that bad of a band when they started out. I may be alone in that opinion, but screw it, this is nostalgic for me. For those wondering, yes, this song was only in the dishonorable mentions of my worst of 2003 list entirely because of Finn. I, on the other hand, love it for the reasons you would probably expect. A lot of you commented on that video stating you liked the song, which I thought was interesting, so I guess this one's for you.
Don't know why I didn't come.
While Jewel was busy selling out in 2003, Norah Jones stepped in to fill the void Jewel left and made a classic little song that I probably like more for nostalgia than I do for the song itself. It feels warm and inviting to listen to, with its simplistic instruments and cooing vocals. That's right, even I can be lame sometimes.
I put your picture away, sat down and cried.
So as a kid, I was obsessed with Sheryl Crow's album Come On, Come On, for some reason. That's not the reason I like this. I haven't liked Sheryl Crow's music in over a decade. I'm just impressed that this interesting and kinda heartfelt breakup ballad came from Kid Rock of all people. So consider this a pity mention, I guess. I still really like it, but yeah, this is weird for me. Until recently, I didn't know that the guy who sang on this was the same guy who sang Wherever You Will Go. Small world, I guess.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Country drinking song. Classic.
Also, the way Alan Jackson introduces Jimmy Buffett is one of my favorite moments on this entire year-end.
I can't help but wonder, what would Jimmy Buffett do? Funny you should ask, Alan.
It's so dorky, but it's funny, and I will hear no words to the contrary.
Makes me that much stronger, makes me work a little bit harder.
Beautiful was a contender for my worst list for this year for how thin and shrill it came across. Fighter, on the other hand, puts Aguilera's pipes to good use for a rock song that's a bit basic, but with riffs that still pack a punch. This was a pleasant surprise coming from this artist.
All you gotta do is say yes. Don't deny what you feel.
Sitting at the very bottom of the year-end is a slice of neo-soul that feels borderline experimental with the blocky percussion and futuristic synth warbles, at least futuristic by early 2000s standards. It's an incredibly relaxing listen, and I think it deserves some attention, especially since the duo that made it unfortunately went down as a one-hit wonder. I almost feel proud that they were just barely able to leave their mark on music history with this.
Rain on me, Lord, won't you take this?
Ashanti's a name I'm probably gonna see a lot when I cover 2001 and 2002, so I better get used to it now. Thankfully, if you can ignore the Ja Rule collapse she made, she makes it easy with a bombastic power ballad and a deliciously sultry performance. Yeah, I think I could get used to this.
And so we got
Number 1. I think that I owe a lot of my inspiration behind making these kinds of videos to Ethan, formerly known as the Double Agent. He, more than Todd, was what interested me in going back to the music of yesteryear to discover just how good or bad it could be. Currently, there's next to nothing he's left public on his channel, so I can't really use any clips of his work.
But rest assured, I did find him to be a great inspiration back then, and even today.
I remember a lot of little things about certain videos. One of them is a moment from his best #1 hits of the 2000s video. In it, one of his honorable mentions was What Goes Around Comes Around by Justin Timberlake. When Ethan mentioned the song, he said he considered this a regression compared to a certain song of Timberlake's from years prior that never hit #1. I wasn't familiar with that song at the time, so I didn't have much context one way or the other. All I knew is that I liked What Goes Around Comes Around, and if I have something even better to look forward to later down the line, that can only be a good thing.
And now that I've finally gotten there, I can say he was right.
You were my sun, you were my earth.
You don't have to say what I did. I already know. My best of 2018 video had a Justin Timberlake song at #2 and an Eminem song at #1. Meanwhile, my best of 2003 video has an Eminem song at #2 and a Justin Timberlake song at #1.
I can't believe that it's freaky.
Told me you love me, why did you leave me all alone?
And this song being my #1 surprised me. Cry Me a River is hands down one of the most bitter songs JT has made in his career, up there with his Prince disses and Give It To Me. What's more, this has got to be one of the most dramatic sounding songs in the mainstream. I've slammed Halsey and especially The Weeknd for their overdramatic songs, and Cry Me a River dips into the same territory hard. It's tense, it's sad, it's angry, it's dismissive, all that stuff. So why does it work here when it just doesn't work in so many other songs?
Do I even need to answer that? It's because of Timbaland.
I have sung Timbaland's praises more than I can probably count at this point. This beat is absolutely incredible in the ways you expect a Timbaland beat to be. Booming R&B percussion, solemn guitar licks, random pitch-shifted vocal bits that work far better than they really should. It really sounds phenomenal in the way most Timbaland beats are, but with the darkness and intensity cranked up to be absolutely breathtaking. I've hated so many tense, dark songs because the beats are poorly produced wrecks with no sense of rhythm or flow, and they make me want to hurt myself. This beat is an achievement, and at this point at least, I think I may even like it more than My Love. It's that good.
I know I'm giving a lot of praise to the producer for why this works, but JT's no slouch either.
Similar to his performance on What Goes Around Comes Around, Justin's vocals are about as delicate as they can be. Lots of falsetto, a few moments where he almost sounds like he's cracking. It's a performance that portrays him as vulnerable and hurting, but still dripping with hate. Just about the best way to portray yourself in a breakup song that ended because of the other partner cheating. And apparently with this particular song, it was Britney Spears that cheated on him. So at least for me, this is a you so cathartic it even beats out CeeLo Green.
Sure, telling your ex to cry you a river is an unbelievably jerkish thing to say, but JT has undeniably earned the right to say it.
More often than not, these songs drive me up the wall with their catty framing and unlistenable production. But Cry Me a River is a rare case where everyone involved has all their bases covered. It's revenge fantasy done right in every aspect of its execution, and I haven't been able to stop listening to it since I first heard it.
I'm sick of BOT1, I'm finally employed once more, and take care.